We wrap up our primary coverage tonight.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So good evening. You're watching this original program on Friday evening, and as regular viewers know, we tape these programs in advance, sometimes a day or two depending on the schedule. This program was recorded yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock, so we'll forego any contemporary commentary because the news cycle moves so fast. Half the stuff I might say would be obsolete. We've had a good number of candidates into the studio over the course of this primary, most recently Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee and Aaron Regunberg, the state representative who is battling him for that spot, has responded and is good enough to come in here and spend some time. He's no stranger to the show. He's been here before. We've had some good conversation. We don't always agree on a lot of things, but we have some good conversation, and we'll do that again tonight. I must say, in case you have a 72-inch screen, and my pupils look this big, I got dilated not too long ago before the taping of the show, so I must tell you, I can't see the lights or I don't want to look at the lights. Now listen, Aaron may leave me wide-eyed on a natural basis, but it's also clinical at this point. So bear with me if I look a little spooky this evening. Hey, you know, real life, man. Everything turned out fine, routine. Here's a headline that kind of outlines the representative's general argument about his political orientation, if you will. There's a lot of labeling of liberal and conservative, left, right, progressive, this, that, and he would suggest that mainstream is the title, that radical isn't. Where progressive fits into the mix, I'm not sure. I'm sure you've seen a clip of some of his television advertising.
Change starts with opening these doors to turn the State House back into the people's house. That's how we'll win universal health care, ban assault weapons, and protect a woman's right to choose. I'm Aaron Regunberg, asking for your vote for Lieutenant Governor.
You know, as many times as I've seen that, I've never seen that woman hit you. Was that first take or second take?
I don't remember, but folks were excited. It was all just volunteers and friends, and folks were excited coming in. But
your theme,
I appreciate you having us.
Good to see you again, as always. Your theme of that ad is behavior's not good at the State House. I mean, that's what I get from it. Tell me what you're thinking.
I mean, absolutely. I've been a state rep now long enough to see in my 4 years as a legislator the way that backroom deals for corporate special interests at the State House are holding us back. I think the organizations that can write big checks, that can hire legions of corporate lobbyists and attorneys, they've got an outsized influence and an outsized voice up there, and I think a lot of times regular people, working families, can get ignored. That's a lot of the work that I've tried to take on as a legislator, and I'm excited about what the Lieutenant Governor's office can be as a public advocate, as a public watchdog, to really put a spotlight on some of that culture and work to bring some more accountability into the system.
That culture stems, I think, more from power than political orientation. But the Democrats have been in power for a long time, so I don't know what argument you or Dan McKee has to, without challenging your party hierarchy, to complain about it.
Well, first of all, I do think that we need to be standing up to the State House machine, and that's what we're doing in this campaign. That's work I've tried to do as a legislator. You're right, in the State House, it's not so much a matter of party. I think it's a matter of are folks actually fighting for regular Rhode Islanders, or are they sort of caught up in that system where they're listening to whoever can write the biggest check, whoever can, has the best connected lobbyist. I think there are rules that we can change. There are system change that we can bring to shift that culture of backroom deal corruption. And I also think that the presence of a statewide office that's staffed, that's working 365 days a year to put a spotlight on some of those bad deals as they pop up, to bring the public together, that's going to create some accountability in a system that, in my experience, doesn't have enough of it.
Well, it's interesting. You say that. Yesterday on your radio debate, actually 2 days ago, if you're watching this on Friday, you should be, because it's when it's airing. So 2 nights ago, on the WPR radio debate, you had I thought you had an interesting juxtaposition. You were talking about the idea that although there's an identifiable progressive movement in this state, I think you acknowledge that, and I think you see yourself as a leader in that movement. You were saying that you don't really see much conflict on the floor. You said that. You said, you know, I don't really see it manifest. I'm paraphrasing. I don't really see it manifest itself on the floor, meaning this reported rift between progressive elected state representatives and, for lack of a better term, old guard. Well, yet you still, in the same breath as you and Dan McKee were battling back and forth on this, as he was trying to deflect the idea that he's part of the old machine and more of, you know, an unendorsed 2014 candidate just trying to do things his own way, you talked about the machine again. So what I'm trying to figure out is what the reality of, do you understand what I'm asking? It seems like you've got a conflicting thought process in terms of the progressive versus old guard politics.
Dan,
not being very difficult.
What I said last night was that language of a war within the party, that's something that I've only seen in that Statehouse bubble. I haven't seen really any evidence of it on, you know, in the actual lived reality of Rhode Islanders as I'm traveling around the state, as I'm talking to families and workers and people all across our state. What I've seen is
maybe I misinterpreted. So you were saying
there's really a consensus,
but you do
among
see it
Rhode
on the floor.
Islanders.
You do see it on the floor.
I think the only place where that war within the party exists is, yeah, it's among politicians and insiders. Among actual Rhode Islanders, the vast majority of folks agree that healthcare should be a right for everyone, not a privilege for those who can afford it. Rhode Islanders agree that we should protect a woman's right to choose at the state level. Rhode Islanders agree that we should take some common sense action to prevent gun violence. I think they agree that if you're working full time, you shouldn't be grinding it out in poverty. So that's what I've been hearing all across our state, whether I'm in Providence, whether I'm in Burrillville, whether I'm in Warwick, whether I'm in Little Compton, whether I'm in Westerly. It's when you get into that Statehouse bubble that the conversation shifts. And that's something I noticed right when I was elected, how quickly you can suddenly be in this situation where the only people you're talking to are full-time lobbyists. Those are the people walking the halls, mostly going to committee hearings, going to the fundraisers, and you think about who can afford to hire, you know, a team of full-time lobbyists and attorneys. It's not, you know, it's not your average working family, it's not your single mom waitress, it's generally folks that can write much bigger checks. And so that creates, I think, an imbalance in whose voices are being heard up there, and it's an imbalance that, as Lieutenant Governor, using that statewide bullhorn, that platform, those resources, we can really put the people's priorities front and center and really try to shake things up in that system.
So let me see if I understand this. And what's unique with the Lieutenant Governor's office is that it has very little constitutional mandate other than to be prepared to take on the governor's office, and there are a few emergency management and other committee type assignments and oversight assignments, but for the most part it's a wait and see job unless you create your own niche. And the last few lieutenant governors, including this lieutenant governor, I think they've created at least a purpose that they thought was in their design. You're doing nothing different. You just have a different design, it seems to me. But what am I hearing from you in terms of this watchdoggy, state-housey type of thing? You're going to be, what, the daily reporter on your office is going to daily comment on that which is happening in the State House? Are you going to be kind of do you have a vision of being the leadership's worst nightmare, in the sense that everything that happens there, you're going to be putting a statement out, you're going to be, well, you're going to be on them like a cheap suit? What's your vision?
The vision really comes from my experience in the legislature and seeing the way things operate and seeing that it is possible to bring folks together to try to win change. You know, there's one example I mentioned last night. There was a piece of legislation this last year that was all greased and it was right on the verge of passing.
Which one?
It was written for this one developer who'd given $64,000 to top leaders in recent years so that he could get basically ratepayer subsidies for a dirty incineration bill.
It was the Speaker's
bill.
bill.
Well, it had actually passed the Senate, but it was top leadership, right? Because they'd gotten a lot of money for it, to build a dirty incineration plant in our communities. Now, on that issue, I was able to, as a rep, bring together environmental groups, bring together ethics groups like Common Cause and others to really put a spotlight on that dirty backroom deal. We built enough public pressure that we were able to get leadership to kill it. But what the problem, Dan, is that while that's happening, there's 3 other things that pop up. I think there's real value in having a staffed office that's doing that work 365 days a year. And I think you understand the value of that spotlight. That's some of the work that you do.
Oh, I think there's room for everybody to keep a closer eye on the legislature. I'm just trying to get a clear picture as to whether this is pick your battles, and there may be many, or whether this is going to be a chronic, I don't know, daily conscience of the General Assembly that you think the new role of the Lieutenant Governor is going to be. Short answer on that.
My short answer is I think my record is being strategic and being able to win real change. You know, I haven't been just an incessant voice in the legislature. I've actually been someone who's been able to bring people together to win positive things, to stop some negative things. And so you want to be strategic, but you want to be, that 365 day a year watchdog and advocate for all of the people in our state who can't afford those legions of corporate lobbyists and attorneys.
Okay. So again, I think the unique thing about this Lieutenant Governor's office, folks, is that you can tailor it in a lot of ways the way you want it to be. The future for Lieutenant Governor's position, we'll get our candidate's thought on that, and we'll hit a couple of his hot button issues as we continue. Stay with us. So this is one of the conversations that's happening across America, not just here in Rhode Island, and that is a little bit of anxiety over Roe v. Wade. In fact, as Brett Kavanaugh is in the midst of his hearings as we speak, there's been a lot of Democratic penetration into the conversation on Roe v. Wade and whether that's revisited. My prediction is that there's a lot more worry about this than will be real, but that's just a prediction. It's just a prediction.
Dan,
you want to do what here in terms of protecting abortion rights?
Well, if I can just respond to that, the Republican Party has been itching to get rid of Roe v. Wade for decades, and they've been building out the apparatus to do it as quickly as they possibly can.
Yeah, and there are multiple states that are all ready to take advantage of that on the other side of you. There's no doubt about that. I just think sometimes expectations for jurists, you know, on appointment can sometimes disappoint. I think whatever administration thinks they've got something going on. Having said that,
we know that Donald Trump made a promise that he was going to appoint Supreme Court justices.
And there's no doubt. There's no doubt that Kavanaugh fits that promise.
Right.
There's no dispute there. I'm just rolling the dice, saying, you know what, I got black. I don't have red. I got black. I don't think this could happen. Anyway,
and respectfully, I think you and I are in a position where we can say, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. There are women across our state who are actually the ones who have the bodies that are impacted by this, that are saying, this is a critical issue for us, and we're asking our state leaders to step up and listen and do something about it.
And you want to do what?
So I've been proud to co-sponsor legislation to codify the protections of Roe v. Wade here at the state level, to make sure that no matter what happens, and I think a lot of people don't realize, the moment that Roe v. Wade is overturned at the federal level, Rhode Island is one of the states where abortion rights are immediately at risk because of some very bad laws that we've got on the books. So we've got legislation to try to change that. I've been proud to be, you know, at every rally, every organizing meeting, every committee hearing to support this bill. That's one big difference in this race.
And what is your role as Lieutenant Governor? It seems to me that in some ways leaving your East Side rep seat may take a little bit of your leadership ability away, in the sense that as Lieutenant Governor, it's one thing, you know, in preseason here in the campaigns to talk about what you're going to do as Lieutenant Governor. Then you get elected and people go, who? What? Like,
so what that
go downstairs to the first and mind your business.
What that office has is, one, a statewide platform that we talked about, and two, some resources that actually can be used to organize, to help support the good folks who are fighting up there for the right things, like protecting a woman's right to choose. Because right now, as you know, it's scary it's not easy to go up against leadership, to be that independent voice within that Statehouse machine. As a rep, I don't have any staff, right? Speaker of the House controls every staff person in that building. And so to have that office that's actually going to help the organizations that are working on this to build the bigger, more powerful coalitions we need to pass ambitious policy change like this, I think that can be a real game changer, and we need it because the reality is women's rights are under assault right now like never before. And they're looking at their state government as really the last line of defense from these assaults that are coming out of the Trump administration. Rhode Island women deserve to have state leaders that have the guts to step up and really fight for these rights.
That, and what else would you say is the key thing you want people to remember in terms of what you're for? We'll talk about in the next segment what you think Dan McKee is not doing and can't get done, or da-da-da-da-da. But tell me, what do you want to be remembered for at the ballot box in terms of what will happen or what you promise will happen if you get elected?
Our campaign is all about bringing some public accountability to the State House, trying to shake up that backroom deal culture of corruption. We talked about why I think that office can actually
be
playing a leading role in that
That's the driving theme.
Absolutely.
It's not political ideology. It's good old-fashioned watching the boys and girls and making sure that they're doing the right thing.
I think
the General Assembly's police
the two are connected. I think when people in those decision-making seats know that there's accountability, know that everyday working families are going to be coming up to the State House and holding them accountable, I think then we're going to see action on these issues, whether it's making health care a right for everyone, whether it's making sure no one's working full-time and living in poverty.
Well, listen, I appreciate that you visualize being somebody who are going to have people parading and giving you a knock on the shoulder coming through the door. There are a couple of things that I'm not sure that, we probably agree on 3 or 4 or 5 issues. There's a couple of major things that you and I could debate, but I'm not running, so I'm not going to waste your time on that. But the one thing that you and I have agreed on, and actually you took a piece of advice from me, and that is the logistics of working families. You can't park at the State House. Now, I know you sent me a nice note and said, thanks for the idea. I'm going to follow up on that. How far did that get? Wah, 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 right? I mean, they make that your first project. You may get a vote or 2 on that just to create some damn parking for people to get to the State House.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that conversation. Last year I introduced the CLEAR Act, which was a package of some basic logistical changes to make it easier for folks, public parking so that people can physically get up there, childcare so that folks with parental responsibilities can actually get up there and be heard, technology investments so that people can be heard remotely and actually take advantage of some of the things that other state houses are doing. And it also included some measures like saying that legislators shouldn't be taking contributions from lobbyists during the legislative session, some things to try to level that playing field. Again, these are issues that we need to actually be elevating, and with the Lieutenant Governor's office, you're going to have someone who's running point, who's bringing people together to make sure that we're talking about these.
Well, regardless of what you think about whatever issue that comes up and what the logistics are, the logistics for public access are probably one of the worst in America, in Rhode Island. And so I'd throw into that mix another unsolicited suggestion, if this is going to be your bailiwick, and that is to at least bang the drum for better accountability, I should say accessibility for public meetings as well. A lot of these hearings happen at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, bing, bang, boom, working people can't get there. This State House may be on television from time to time on live or tape delay, but for the most part, it's not accessible.
And if I could add one more that I think dovetails with that I think is really important, as you know, end of every legislative session, the General Assembly votes to suspend the rules. And so any of the rules that allow for some transparency and time between things so that people know what's going on go out the window, and that's why 90% of all the action happens in the last couple days of the session. If you can have a real sustained campaign around changing the internal rules that govern the House and the Senate to, for example, say that you can't suspend the rules, that's going to force the legislature to actually do its work spaced out over the whole session. It means that people are going to be able to know what's going on, be able to pinpoint those bad deals as they come up before it's too late. I think there's a lot of those rules that they're not the sexiest things, but they can make a big difference in that accountability.
All right, we'll come back and we'll talk about his opponent when we come back. Stay with us. All right, so it always gets tough out there at the end of a campaign. This Dump Dan McKee program that's advertising out there, that is not your campaign specifically, correct? That is the American Federation of Teachers PAC. A lot of contentiousness between you and the Lieutenant Governor on the radio yesterday as to whose PAC is worse and who's behaving badly and who's not. Your problem with Dan McKee and the work he's done in the last 4 years is what?
Well, there's been a number of big differences between me and my opponent in this race.
Well, your staff told you we only have 3 minutes, so highlight it.
Real quick, you know, as I've mentioned, I've fought to pass protections for working families, whether it's higher wages, whether it's paid sick days for over 100,000 Rhode Islanders who never before had that security. My opponent sided with corporate lobbyists against those proposals. You know, we talked about, I've fought to try to pass legislation to protect a woman's right to choose. My opponent was on the radio just a couple months ago saying that Roe v. Wade was under no threat, that fight was just a gesture. I think that's wrong. I think we need, you know, a public advocate who's actually willing to take on that Statehouse machine. I haven't seen my opponent, Dan McKee, do that really once over his 4 years as lieutenant governor. And this issue of campaign finance is definitely concerning to me. The idea that out-of-state millionaires and billionaires are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into propping up Dan McKee's campaign, whether it's $50,000 just last week from a fracked gas and offshore drilling billionaire executive, $75,000 the week before from 2 Wall Street financiers, whether it's those
monies, just for clarity, those monies are also PAC investments.
So that's super PAC funding. So
right.
So he does not have direct control over it.
Correct.
My concern, I think a lot of Rhode Islanders' concern, is why are these out-of-state millionaires and billionaires putting so much money into getting Dan McKee elected? Do we think that these corporate special interests have the best interests of everyday Rhode Islanders at heart?
This becomes a challenge because
I don't.
As I said on the radio yesterday, and full disclosure, I said here, I consider Dan a friend. If I was a Democrat, I might vote for him. I'd probably vote for him. I'm not a Democrat, and I don't know what I'm going to do in the primary. And I don't feel like I should be sitting here defending Dan McKee. He had a pretty clear run here earlier this week, and I'm giving you the same for the most part to express your views. But I think it is important to just remind people when you talk about millionaires and billionaires. For instance, this guy who's part of the family, Purdue Pharma, which is a fractured family over what opioids have actually done to the country, has an interest in ed reform, and he gave Dan McKee money because of his ed reform issues, not because of any opioid policy. So it is creative politics that anybody will do in a campaign down the end to try to pin something on the opposition donkey, and I think that's what's going on there.
What I can say is that the pharmaceutical billionaire who has profited off our nation's OxyContin crisis, he's not going to be putting $20,000 into a super PAC to support my campaign. These out-of-state millionaires and billionaires, they're not backing my campaign.
Because he may disagree with you on education.
Because they know
That's
that
my
I'm
only
going to
point.
be fighting against
you and Dan
those corporate
McKee have a
special
difference of
interests.
opinion, I'm sure, on mayoral academies and all that kind of stuff. The NEA has endorsed you. They think McKee is Satan on the mayoral academies, all that kind of stuff. I just think it's important that we clarify that. But you got 30 seconds, so go ahead. In fact, you got 20 seconds. Last word. Look at the camera and tell people why they ought to vote for you.
I'm running for lieutenant governor to fight for a state that works for everyone, rather than one that's rigged for the few. There are important differences in this race. I'm not going to have the support of those out-of-state millionaires and billionaires, but if you agree with me that we need to shake things up in our state house, that we need some more public accountability in state government, then I'm asking for your vote in the Democratic primary this Wednesday.
There you go. It's kind of like a debate. Final comment. We wish you luck. I appreciate your accessibility.
Thanks for having me.
Final word when we come back. Stay with us. Coming up on the Friday, this is Friday, coming up on the Monday show, we're going to have quite the argument. 2 separate shows in the last 2 weeks where a couple of guys were getting after each other. They'll join each other here on the set. Mike Stenhouse for the Center for Freedom and Prosperity and Bob Walsh from the National Education Association on set together. I'd be tuned in. Have a good weekend. Bye.